I mean, there's baby pictures of me out there holding a hammer when I
Oh,
was like maybe a year old or whatever, wearing little jean overalls and a little spinny cap or whatever.
when was the first time you heard the word architect? Because I'm sure being around builders, contractors,
I know how to draw. I know a few things about building cabinets, so from there I was like, okay, I can maybe give architecture a shot.
so going through that interview process, kind of walk me through step by step because
That my hobby of drawing and my dad's business are the main things that I brought together to decide to go on this path towards architecture, to becoming an architect.
welcome, Gustavo. Thank you so much for the time and to be on this bit of an experiment and bit of a pet project because I've in spending the last now 4 years out of school, I've just found so much wasn't taught, or at least there wasn't even a playbook or a group of people to really engage with after school. So I'm hoping to cultivate that kind of group and story because it's like, what do you do that moment after school? Like, school's over, graduation happens. How are you gonna find a job? Especially when school didn't focus a bunch of time on interviewing, on what kind of strategies to find a job. I mean, they threw one job fair at us, and that was about it.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah, for sure. Like,
mhm.
mhm.
Oh, and so today it's all about extracting out Gustavo's journey because each of us have our own personal story to tell because no one can perfectly relate to anybody else, but many people have very similar backstories, upbringing, and I found in school we were very diverse. Like, not too many people had the same kind of background. And so I would just love to hear your story. And so, starting with more of the backstory, like, where are you from? Some upbringing, parents, siblings. Like, what was childhood like for Gustavo?
So yeah, I'm originally from Mexico. I came up here around when I was around 8 years old. I ended up coming up here into second grade. I'm the oldest of three siblings. I have two younger brothers. Um, we came up here for financial reasons. My dad wanted to give us a better opportunity at life.
Right.
He had his cabinet business back there in Mexico as well, but he decided that it was time to move up, try and find better opportunities. So we came up here. He opened up his shop again up here, slowly, bit by bit. At the beginning, he opened up his shop out of my uncle's garage, and then from there, eventually, he ended up renting a place, and now we own the warehouse we're working out of.
Oh, wow. That
And
is
at the beginning,
yeah.
we for maybe a year, a year and a half, we lived in on one of my uncle's houses. We lived with them. We all five of us at that point lived in one room
Oh, wow.
with my uncle and my aunt.
How
So that
old
was
at the
I
time were
was
you?
at the time I was 8, about to turn 9,
Wow.
and then yeah, from there we moved all over Dallas. Pretty much, we lived in Um, what's it called? Oh, the around the area of Westmoreland. From there, we moved on to North Dallas. From then, we moved down to Oak Cliff, and that's where the majority of my, I guess, the majority of my school time was spent.
In which part was that?
In Oak Cliff.
In Oak Cliff, nice. So,
Hmm.
what part of Mexico are you from?
We're originally from Nuevo Leon. That's one of the northern states of Mexico.
Oh, it's a state. What's it called?
Yeah, the city, Nuevo Leon is a state,
New
and the
Nuevo Leon.
city, hmm and the city is called Linares.
Linares.
It was a smaller city at the time. By now, it's become a bit larger. It's not as little as a pueblo or like a little village. There was schools there, paved roads, and all of that.
Mm.
Every now and then there would be a couple of neighborhoods which is dirt roads, and like my grandfather's um, orange orchard was maybe like a 30-minute drive out of town.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it was pretty nice up there.
N- nice. And what made y'all choose Dallas?
Mainly because most of my family is up here as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
My dad has a large family,
Yeah.
mostly brothers, uh, and I want to say it's about 8 or 9 of them in total, with 2 sisters. So that's like 10 or 11. It's a lot. I forget how many it's total, but the majority of them, like eight, 8 or 7, live up here. Everybody's in Dallas,
Oh wow.
so there was an easy place for us to connect and get used to the people that have already lived here.
Right. So were most of the aunts and uncles in one part of Dallas or like spread all over?
Spread all over.
Uh huh.
So yeah, like I said, some of them lived around that area around Sylvan and Westmoreland. Another part of them lived up there in North Dallas, and a couple lived out in like the Garland area, like a little bit out of Dallas. But
Right.
generally, everybody lives up here in the North Texas area.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little biased, being from Dallas, but I get why they kept driving past Houston and Austin and, and just, okay, I'll stop here. Because also, if you keep going, then there's Oklahoma, Arkansas, and just like, it's just like
Yeah.
Dallas is a good, like, sweet spot for a bunch of people. And so this whole
Mhm.
time, your dad is doing cabinets?
Yeah, the entire time.
Wow.
When he was younger, maybe like a teen, a little bit, maybe when he was a teen, like he started out working at a little wood shop where they had him carving like table legs and like chair legs, like those fancy little dragon claw types
Yeah,
chair
yeah.
legs. And what he was doing back in the
Wow.
day when he was younger. At some point, he saved up enough money to buy a warehouse out there, back there near a house, and he had his own business there for a couple of years. Pretty much
Interesting.
since since I was born, he bought that warehouse he was at.
Wow. So, how young were you when he first asked or made you help?
I mean, there's baby pictures of me out there holding a hammer when I
Oh,
was like when I was maybe a year old or whatever, wearing little jean overalls and a little spinny cap or whatever.
that's so cool, bro. We have to get those
Mm,
pictures and we have to post them up here right now. Nah, but
I don't know about that.
no, but that's amazing. Just like I feel, especially now, those trades are often lost because you have to start and end making it with your hands. You know, like yes, there is some machining, but still fed by the hands, and that's actually something kids can easily grasp on and start. And so, at what point did you take a pretty big role in that?
Um, well, for the most part, when I was younger, most weekends I would go help him just like sweep up the shop or sand the cabinets or help him stain. But eventually, like when I was in high school, I would be the main role that I got was being his translator and helping
Oh,
him install.
wow, wow.
So whenever, because at some points he did have an employee that was his translator, but then like people left, and then it was easier for him to just have me and have appointments be on over the weekend and just have me go and translate for him.
Wow.
So that was me, like even late late middle school, early high school. Like there was one time when um, I want to say it was a Friday or something like that that we drove all the way down to Austin to meet one of our clients,
Oh, wow.
and then drove all the way back on that same night because it was a client that we had done work or my dad had done work up here in Irving, and then the guy moved down to Austin and was really liked my dad's work, so decided to hire my dad for work down there as well. So since he was a good client, my dad was okay. I'm gonna do your work for you down there too. And there I go. I was with him on the drive down to Austin. Went down there to translate for him, between him and the guy,
And
and it worked out.
wow. Wow. And then at what point in starting out, helping out, staining to being full blown middleman on the business, what what pushed you away or guided you away from doing the same thing? Like, what made you? What actually pack it up? When was the first time you heard the word architect? Because I'm sure being around builders, contractors, you know, it probably came up. But when for you did you first hear it, and then when was that first thought of, oh, that could be me?
To be honest, I couldn't give you like a specific time,
Okay.
but I'm sure at some point, while we were working for people, because a couple of the people that we did work for were like engineers, um, out here in Las Colinas over here in Irving, and like honestly, it was in high school when I first like considered architecture as a potential job.
Hmm. And did high school help at all in that education? Like, were there architecture classes?
Not really. High school was a bit odd in my case. I ended up going to one of those early college high schools where we didn't really have our own high school building. We were in the basement of a community college. So we
Hmm.
were taking college classes and high school classes at the same time. So they didn't really have extracurricular activities or anything other than their basic college art classes, which I did take a couple, but it was just like art appreciation and drawing. It wasn't anything directly like architectural classes of any sort.
Then, then what led you in that more architecture pathway?
I think that I've always been pretty creative person. Like being little, I would play with building blocks. My dad would make little out of scrapped pieces of wood. He would make little blocks for us to play with.
Yeah.
Um, I since I was really young, I've been into drawing. Like I would check out um, how to like robot drawing books or dragon drawing books out of the library, and I would like follow the steps to like draw certain sketches of dragons and robots, and like I even draw my little toy cars and all of that.
Oh, sweet.
And then so I felt that I was getting decent. By the time I was in high school, I thought I was pretty decent at drawing. And in my head originally, I was like, okay, maybe since I like playing video games and I'm creative, and at the time I'm like, okay, I like playing Minecraft and all of that. Maybe I can go into game design. But one of my teachers was like, that's not a very good place to go into. Maybe you should look into something more higher education, I suppose. I'm not sure why he decided to lead me away from that, but I was okay. I know how to draw. I know a few things about building cabinets, so from there I was like, okay, I can maybe give architecture a shot.
Interesting. And I find those artists who really enjoy drawing because it's taking that blank piece of paper or tracing or what have you and then creating something brand new. And often it takes that just dense visual imagination to actually pull it off, and then that combined with your dad's very practical uh cabinet business. Like, I'm still curious though, was it that teacher who said to do architecture over game design because it wasn't that lucrative, or like what more pushed you in that architecture area?
Well, I'm not sure what his intentions were, but in my mind at that point, I was like, okay, if I want to be creative and I want to give physical form my to my artistic vision, then
Mm.
architecture would be a good form,
Mm.
a good career path to follow.
Right. So it was more from within you. That's so interesting. And then or at what point did you make that call? Was it like freshman, sophomore, or a junior, senior?
In high school, it was pretty late. It was senior year.
Oh wow, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was actually on the more engineering path, even up through starting out in community college, and then I
Hmm.
switched it up. But that's so interesting how okay, I can draw and draw well. So what kind of things were you drawing?
Um, Throughout high school, I would draw uh, like drawings or images I would see from these magazines and like anime and manga.
Yeah,
Like
cool.
I would go grab a lowrider magazine that was full of tattoos, and I was like, okay, I like that drawing there. I'm gonna give it a shot and draw it myself. And like with the magazine on one side and the paper on the other side, I would look at it and draw it. And I would do a good job at replicating the drawing.
Hell yeah.
And
Do
like the
you
same way with the characters that I liked out of the animes and mangas, I would like, okay, I like that guy's design. I'm gonna draw it
wow.
out.
Wow, man, I was always so jealous of you guys because I had to really struggle to learn how to draw anything, and watching other people draw so easily. was at times quite frustrating because I would draw and then erase, then draw some more and erase, but then the
Mm.
actual artist, you just keep on going, There's not like much like going back because the first stroke is often like impressive. So, was there ever a time where you didn't know about what architecture was, and then like you realized, oh, this is a whole field, or was it always quite apparent to you because grew up in that field?
Yeah, I would say that at the beginning, the time between high school, choosing the career, and then actually going into school for it, I wasn't entirely aware of the entire career, what the entire field entailed. Like, like I knew like from TV and whatnot about blueprints and like that there's some drawing involved into designing a building and whatnot. I knew about falling water because we talked about it in like one of my environmental science classes. So that was okay. That was pretty cool. And then there was this one time uh, with one of those fancy clients my dad had. He decided to tell him that I was trying to go into architecture when I was in high school, and the guy just grilled me about like how many architects do you know, how many types of architecture do you know, and like he just caught me off guard, and I was like
Oh no.
it was a rough time.
Just like a
But
random client, just like
yeah.
trying like to show off basically.
Mm.
So after taking that call of okay architecture, what made you stumble upon our great school of UTA?
So originally I had my plan was to go to Texas Tech uh
Interesting.
directly after graduating high school. That's the place I had applied to. That's the place I got accepted to. I even went down there for orientation and all of that. But at the end of the day, we didn't really have the financial backing to that would allow me to go out there.
Wow.
And I guess it was just some miscommunication on my end and my dad, who
Hmm.
would be paying for the majority of it.
Right.
Th- that it didn't work out, so that kind of just dropped there. So I had to I had to take a little break for about a year, and then I was okay. If I can't move across the state to the middle of nowhere, maybe there's somewhere nearby. And okay, there's UTA. So went ahead and applied to UTA, got accepted, and then it started from there.
Did you go and visit at all prior?
UTA.
Yeah.
Yeah, during high school, the community college itself would have a couple of trips to different universities. So like we went to UTA, we went to UT Dallas, the one in Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
We went to UNT Denton,
My bad.
or yeah. So we just went around, looked at different colleges in the area. Uh, with the school itself, with the high school, we went down to Austin to take a tour of
Oh wow.
UT Austin.
Wow.
So I was a little familiar of what the place itself was and like what options they had.
Right. And you seem pretty dead set on architecture because like you went and then couldn't and then a break and then I mean if any basically kid a year off, they might change it all up
Hmm.
completely. But you stayed that course and then in school I bet that was Well, was it all that you dreamt it would be? I mean, that's a pretty like loaded and vague
That's a,
question.
yeah. I mean, I would say that to be fair, since I wasn't really privy to what the career would be, it was more of a learning experience and like understanding, okay, this is what I signed up for. I'm still down for it. So I started learning.
Did you know at all what to expect, even going into school? Like, was there any other architectural influence that was a person, you know?
Not really. Like I
Oh,
knew just off of this general experience and like from the tour that I got at Texas Tech that it would be there's would be a lot of drawings. There would be some model building. So that's the main gist of it to say.
yeah,
But
and
like I outside my dad's business of like a cabinet making, there wasn't anything else that was like a direct architectural like influence.
right. That's so interesting, and it appears so apparent to just come from within you, and how there really wasn't that guiding teacher or force except from within of, oh, I really enjoy to create, and then I want to actually make that more real than just 2D. That's incredible. I don't want to
Yeah,
get
for
too
like
uh-huh.
yeah, for like example in elementary school and middle school, there was a bit more influence from like teachers for my art classes then that would tell me to okay follow through on this, try and look more into that, and like
Mm,
that kind of carried across into high school, uh, where I didn't really have those classes available, but I knew kind of what I wanted to do,
what a shame.
and
Uh-huh.
mm-hmm, uh,
Yeah, it seems that those art teachers are absolutely crucial in pointing out the ones who can actually turn that art into something a little bit more concrete. And
mm-hmm.
then, like in high school, like you didn't really have like that outlet, but still was like, oh, I'm interested. I mean, I was speaking with Kristen, and he's like, he's almost the flip of like he wasn't all that interested, but then high school and the classes like, oh, this is interesting, you know, and then being able to slowly step up, but you are like just born in it, molded by it, and like you must be, you know, this architect, and that is outstanding. And I don't want to get too bogged down on school. Like I feel that is a its own and Doors box, but just like a few takeaways from it. As in, what was the biggest surprise of school for you?
The biggest surprise would probably be the intensity of it all. Um, I wasn't expecting to do all nighters as often, as many times as we all did. But the projects, the type of projects that we did were also pretty interesting, pretty out of the box.
Right.
Like I was thinking it would have been okay, here's your project about designing a house or designing a just a simple building or whatever. But then you would get lucky with a couple of different studios and professors that would like take that to the next level and keep it more conceptual.
Right. Like we had to they're probably one of the craziest studios out there, and and seeing how you cut this crazy prompt of basically a mausoleum for Walt Disney, right? It was a mausoleum, or was it something
Yeah, it
else?
was so the prompt exactly was a layer, like a hideout for Walt Disney.
Oh yeah, a lair for Walt Disney. That's even better than a mausoleum. And like the route you took it in of making it actually linear and over time, and it's actually a whale, and it was just an app. It was wild, bro. And seeing you struggle with, I don't know what she's trying to tell me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do to that moment of I got it. I know what to do, and then boom, done. And that whole creative process in school is almost like par none, you know, and it's really able to put you in that field of extreme creativity. And so what do you I'll start with what are I'll start on the positive of what's the best or favorite things you learned from school.
The best things, favorites. Mm, I would probably say that overall is that I learned that I have a little knack for narratives,
Mm, you do.
because like that that's one of the examples, the layer for Disney. I personally feel that I could have done the visual aspect of the project better, and up till this day I want to redo it for myself because there's so many ideas of how better to visually represent that. But at the end of the day, the narrative that I gave for that is what saved me.
Right.
There was another project in grad school where it was I created uh, a cyberpunk video game,
Oh
pretty
yeah, that
much.
was so cool.
And on that one, again, it was like it wasn't. That's one of the classes that was more conceptual, so there wasn't really like a building designed per se. But what I ended up designing was like the skeleton for a board game that had to do with like aggregation and AI and all of that. And then again, for my final studio of grad school, part of the project was writing a whole book alongside with the actual project itself,
A whole book?
and like a whole book from like beginning of research to and final discussion about what the final critique was about
That's
and what
beautiful.
you took away from the semester. So I can write. I'm good at narratives, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like getting support from those professors that think out of the box is pretty good, because they're not there to hinder your growth. They're there to like push you along on the right way, and like towards something you can actually put to paper, put to screen.
Right. And I felt often in school it was either that of it being a great professor or the opposite of you have to do what they like and what they want. And it's like, well, no, this is
And
my
we
idea. Like, obviously, it can't be just crap and like there has to be doors and windows and structure. But beyond that, uh, it's all about just opinions at that point. And stepping back just a touch, my all-time favorite studio critique final jury moment is they're asking you about the building. He explains how he goes through it, but then at the end, what happens? And it's basically a journey of his life. I don't want to like butcher it, but they asked you, so what happens when he gets to the end? And then you just say, he dies. He's dead. And then they just were like, okay, that's that, you know? And
Yeah.
it was that kind of a conceptual class of, oh, this is actually like a space or a place that you don't escape from. And it's like, what does that even mean? And it's just so interesting. And even building it up to that with all of that story under it, I think we're gonna have to get a representation of that. So you might want to up those graphics, Ken, because between you and Tristan and Juan's and like it's just some insane visuals, ideas, and like, oh, these are architecture projects, you know, and so
Hmm.
I think we should revisit that class and even just to kind of talk about it, you know, because I think
That's a good idea for another episode.
yeah, I'm gonna write that down. I had access to all. Well, I still have access to the shared drive that everybody put them in,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
everybody's except Tristan's is in there, and Tristan's was the one I've been like wanting like to pull up because it's all like hello and like where's Waldo, you know? But
It's
so
amazing.
but yeah, because I would love to hear it explained even now because honestly then, you know, we're so tired, so focused on on our own stuff that we actually aren't able to fully absorb other people's work, you know. So
Hmm.
fast forwarding school just a little bit to some key takeaways of that that journey, that process from graduation day until now, because we are free birds, you know, pushed out of that nest. So to clear up a little bit, you went straight into grad school, right? Or was it a year off? I forget.
Yeah, I went straight into grad school after undergrad.
Okay, so then at what point did you hit that first job? Was it after grad school?
Yeah, my first job, which is the one I currently have, I got it after completing grad school. Like during school, I tried. I went to down to the career fair that happens every year. Went a couple of years actually. Uh, I was in the I was in one of those internship programs with the AIAS,
Mm-hmm.
where I had a mentorship program. I had a mentor with an architect who worked at a firm, um, and I learned a few things off of that. But but then in grad school, I it was the first time I went to go get went to interview for a firm that has been mentioned many times by many of our other members, and that just didn't pan out either. I guess maybe something that might have been a hindrance in that conversation was that I'm still an integral part of my dad's business.
Right,
So I was particularly looking for a part-time job because I was still in grad school and I still had to appoint some time to my family business.
right.
So maybe that got in the way of starting earlier than I did.
Right, and that is a gigantic problem right now in our industry. Is there is not really that stepping stone. A part of it's because of the practice, but I don't think firms have been that creative of how to integrate lesser skilled but really experienced people, because they're skilled at
Hmm.
all levels, but more what do they do? It's like, no, you aren't going to ask them to do a whole reflected ceiling plan and all the specs and then pass it out to clients or consultants. That's an actual job, but you can have them be a part of that process, and then even actually being skilled and and out of school, they don't even take part-time people, and especially at that place, they just wanted to work you 40, 50, 60 hours minimum,
Hmm.
and get just a production crank out of you, which it would have provided skills some for you, but it's probably better that you stayed away. Um, but I mean, y- frankly, we never know, but to look back and even try and think, oh, I should have had that job. It's like, well, but that puts you where you are now. Even, oh, I should have gone to tech. It's like, no, that puts you where you are right now. And I find a gigantic beauty in that rather than trying to force against any other kind of reality. And then so after graduating grad school, it's like boom, graduated. What happened? How did you find that job?
So after grad school, my plan was to take it slow for a couple of months. I was really burnt out from doing school all the way through like that continuously. So I just needed to rest up, get my head straight, and try and figure out what I wanted to do. But in the meantime, I did have one of my friends, one of my fellow classmates in that last studio, that had a couple of connections, and she every now and then she would let me know, okay, this firm here is looking for a new person, or this firm over here is looking for a new person, and I can recommend you to them.
Hmm.
And she recommended me to two places. The first place I did multiple over the phone interviews because that firm um, was going to be mainly um, an online thing because
Hmm.
the principals, the partners were working out of Canada. They had a big project out there, so they were out there. But something happened to the firm itself that they just didn't follow up with me or my friend anymore because she was also doing extra work for them, and then
Hmm.
they just kind of disappeared. Something went wrong with the project, and they vanished or whatever. But then the second firm that she recommended, I did do a couple of in-person interviews with them. Their office isn't too far away. I went in there, talked to them, see what they were all about, and then I didn't I didn't get the job with them directly, but with another firm, another architect that they work with. They work in
Hmm.
collaboration with each other, and I got paired off with that guy, with that architect, and that's the person I've been working for so far. I've been there for
Interesting.
about a year now.
Interesting. So it's as if you come in for an interview and then like, well, the job is actually for this spot over here, but that is
Maybe.
no, I'm that's so so interesting how it happens kind of randomly, and it's too. I don't like how there's so much of a barrier of who you freaking know. And it's not even to gatekeep. It's not some like Hollywood type thing, of like you have to be of the right people or from the
Hmm.
right schools or whatever it is. it's more architects do the hiring for the most part, and they're really busy. And at the bigger firms, they get so many applications that it's like, well, how do you get to the top of that pile? It's like, well, I have an uncle or a cousin or a friend or blah 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 blah, and then that's how
Yeah.
they put you up there. And then I mean, if there's enough qualified people, they don't have to interview that many in the stack to hire the people they need. So it's almost impossible to get to that top of that stack, and it's a part of it too is I feel too few people know architects or people pursuing it, which just happens because it's kind of niche. But also,
Hmm.
I just don't think it's that great of a network. Like, why aren't people coming out of school into a community or a something to truly integrate with, rather than just okay, good luck, pushed out there, and because then everybody's starting from scratch all over. And so, I mean, those are pretty good odds, like a 50% hired rate. I think I had like
Hmm.
a dozen or 20 interviews. I don't even know how many interviews I had. I was also only out of undergrad, which makes it a tad better put.
More
So,
difficult. Yeah.
right. Oh, and so going through that interview process, kind of walk me through step by step, because there's many different kinds of interviews, and it's up to the person giving it. So you mentioned it was in person, and then you got hired at this other place. How did that fully work? And also, what, like, was it the type of interview where you just explain the portfolio, where you explain how good you are, or how much you can learn, or they talk to you? Like, what kind of interview was it also?
So overall, I've interviewed at three places technically. So at the first place, it was first semester of grad school. I went in there dressed up, not too dressed up, but dressed up just nice enough. I went in there. The guy gave me a tour of the place, of the work areas, and then sat me down in his office and told me, "Okay, this is what we need right now. Do you have any experience in that?" And I was like, "Not right now, but I can learn."
Hmm.
And then he told me, "Okay, what can you do?" And I told him, "Okay, I have experience in AutoCAD. I know how to model with Rhino. I have experience with the Adobe software and all of that." And it was okay. Okay, we can. And he was like, "Okay, we can probably teach you how to get into our system where we're gonna be drawing these houses, and we can also get you to help us out with putting together a couple of presentations and pamphlets we're gonna have for this other project through Photoshop and Illustrator and all of that." Um, and then they talked about the money. And I was okay. I can. It would be good if I could make this much money. And they were like, okay, sure. And then that's all I heard from them. Never got any emails back from them or anything like that. Any calls. The second interview I got was entirely through the phone. Again, they were asking, "What do you know? What do you know? What do you know how to do? What do you have experience in? Um, are you fine working online? We can put you down in our system. We can share our files, and we can walk you through our process of how we do things." And I got interviewed by both partners in that firm, and it was over the phone, and it was like three separate calls. I got interviewed twice by the one guy, and the last time with both of them on the same call,
Hmm.
telling me, "Okay, this is a big project we're working on right now. This is what we need. This is what we need people for. It's going to be a big project. Um, big hotel resort thing up here. We're gonna need a lot of help with. So are you ready to handle that workload? And I was okay, yeah. And then something happened with them. And then finally with this last place, it was in person when it came. And I only did an interview with them um, once. Um, in both past instances, they didn't for the they I had a partial portfolio for the first interview at the first place, and they looked at it, didn't really comment on it, and just moved on to their own questions. Um, at the place I got interviewed over the phone, they took a look at it. They thought it was nice and all of that. Um, and then at the last place, again, I also submitted my portfolio, but it was mainly questions about what I knew how to do and what they had in mind for me to do. Like they were like, okay, we do a lot of commercial work. We do restaurants, hotels,
Mm.
warehouses, stuff like that. And okay. And then I was like, okay, I also have experience with drawing mill work because that's what I do with my family business. And okay, that's pretty good. We can have you do a lot of elevations and stuff like that for us. And then that's what I ended up starting doing for the architect that I currently work with. I started doing a lot of elevation drawings for the projects that he's been working on.
R- Interesting, interesting. And so in this job now, is it full interiors as well?
So it depends on the job because that job I first started working on was a remodel of what's it called? Not an apartment building, but like let's say an apartment building for now that had multiple floors that were damaged because of a fire. So they were remodeling all those units that got damaged by the fire. So I had to go in, take take the plans that they had, and look at this Matterport, which is like a 3D view of the interior of the spaces, and redraw what was there existing,
Oh wow.
or redraw things as how the clients wanted to go ahead and take advantage of the fire or the remodel to change things up. See, it was just drawing the elevations of all these condo units and like getting dimensions in there, putting finishes on there, showing where which appliances and lighting fixtures were gonna go where and how.
Mm. And so how big is this firm right now?
Um, it's the architect by himself and me and maybe another guy.
Wow, wow. So
It's pretty small,
right.
and we work in the same office space as that the guys that I interviewed with directly.
Oh wow.
So it's both firms work out of the same space and they
Oh.
collaborate with each other on projects.
It is one kind of the designer and the other the technician?
Not really. They operate
No.
as two separate firms.
Uh-huh.
They just happen to share the same office space. And
Interesting.
like clearly, all the architects, all the principals know each other.
Right.
That's why they have the setup the way it is.
I mean, frankly, if we had our own firms, I would share a space with you, but then I'd also be
Hmm.
like, hey, let's just be one big firm and we can all just have fun together. But
Yeah.
I wonder why that split happens. Obviously, if they came as independents, it's not like they're just all of a sudden gonna switch it up, and it's a bit easier to collab. But I find egos are so strong in architecture that
Oh, for
that
sure.
being the guy like has to be the thing, even if we still need what 10, 20, 30 other people, to help us. I mean, at least, and like that's just to do the drawings, and then there's all the people, like to build it. And so you've been at this spot about a year now. How drastically different or similar is it to school? And slash what was similar and different to your expectations?
So, similar to how I explained it in our last episode, I was expecting something more of of a strict environment.
Mm,
Basically, I was thinking that things were going to be more strict based off how a couple of our professors were in studio and all of that. But the way this whole office is up, it's really relaxed. It's really laid back. So like my boss just gives me the details I need for the project he needs me to work on and just lets me go at it, whether it's working physically there at the office if he needs me to be there or just working from home getting things done.
nice. How often are you at home versus in the office?
uh it depends on what he's having me work on. If
Right.
he's having me work on different projects uh throughout the week, like if he needs me to mess around with a floor plan or mess around with an elevation, I might be at the office like 3 or 4 days out of the week. But for example, this past month, since it's just one, he's only been having me focus on the one project. I've been just working from home because I know what I need to be doing, and I'm
Right,
just
right.
working on it and chipping away at it.
Nice. And that's where a great balance can really strike, because being in person, that's where that creativity happens. I mean, you experience school not in COVID and then school in COVID, and
Thank God, but yeah,
just being in person, just even just having fun, shooting the shit, just saying whatever, or just talking about things that lead to other um creative ideas, rather than just focusing on, okay, it's business, okay, billable hours, okay, time card, punch in and out. And so with it being played back, do you have to be in at a certain time or on at a certain time? Like, obviously if there's meetings and stuff, like have to be prepared and at those. But is it straight like in at 9, or is it kind of like, also, do you clock in and like have all hours recorded, or do you report time? That's like two questions, but
So I report time. Um, and pretty much I check in with them with my boss every morning just to see what we're gonna be doing, see what he wants me to be on. So do start work at 9, get off at 5,
nice.
but there's always that communication between the two of us to make sure that okay, this is what we're gonna be doing now, or okay, you need to move on to this, and then I work throughout the day, and then okay, it's 5. Check in with them if there's anything else he wants to take a look at or whatever, and then I write it off, and that's it for the day.
Nice. Are the two of you working on the same things, or is he working on something else? Like, how is that split between the architect and then you?
So yeah, he's working on separate things from me. Uh, he's he mainly has me working on, let's say, the things he doesn't need to focus so much on. So like I can be doing those elevation drawings that he needs done for the project, while he focuses on the larger ongoing projects that need his attention. For example, the biggest project he's working on right now is a music concert venue, and they're always calling him, always having him to come down on site, always changes things up. So he has to focus and almost entirely on that. And every now and then I do a little work on that, but mainly that's what he's focusing on, and I'm on the back end of other projects. Like we just need to finish up these drawings to for the have the submittal ready for the city and whatnot.
Interesting. In the process of our job, one person can only juggle so many details at once. Like between the two of y'all and that other office that y'all collab with, how many projects are y'all juggling, and
Well,
how big are they?
so I would say that I'm aware of. Me, my boss is doing maybe maybe 5 or 6 different jobs. Um, the the music venue is definitely the largest of them. Um, he has a couple of smaller ones, um, like a restaurant remodel and a new restaurant. He's doing some warehouses.
Interesting.
Um,
And
we're finishing up the beginning stages or the drawings they need to start doing the remodel at that apartment building that I mentioned earlier. And like last week, I went to drop off some permits and stuff like that down in Plano for another project.
playing over here. My bad. So it sounds like y'all are in the full scope from start to end, because often firms like pigeonhole themselves within the process, and they're just designers or they're just architects of record, which means they just build it and they don't even like design anything. So
Mm-hmm.
especially on these restaurants, that's mostly what I handle, and so I'm interested. Are you also fully designing these, or is it working with a other designer, or like what is that like?
So as far as I'm aware, for the few restaurants he's worked on, it's mainly like a franchise. So
Hmm.
they have the same layout and same all of that.
Gotcha.
The details they need to change based on site. And then for the more specific restaurants, like there's a Japanese restaurant he's working on that's just mainly interior renovation. That he had on that one, he had me put together the logo for the restaurant,
Oh, cool.
and this mural that's gonna go in there as well. He had me put that together for him. So in that case, it's just going in there like redrawing the plans and elevations of the existing space to match what the new construction is gonna be.
Right. Those franchises are money makers for sure,
Mm-hmm.
and bunch of architects take them because I mean they also have to get done. And
Mm-hmm.
in now being in this job about a year, it seems like you're pretty heavily involved in do you feel that mentorship is also there?
Um, I think it's there, but uh not as much as I would hope it would be there. Pretty much, I'm learning off of him as much as I can, but I'm mainly learning on the spot on what based on what he gives me to do, because he himself is a little bit too busy to just have that like teaching interaction with me, which at a bigger firm I would imagine they go through their process of like putting you into their system and getting you on how they do things. over
Yeah.
here, like where I'm here right now, it's like I need you to get this done. Here's kind of an idea of how I've done it, and here's a few couple of examples you can take a look at, but go for it.
Right, and that's its own way of learning trial by fire because you're just put in a
Hmm.
spot of having to learn by osmosis rather than being taught in a classroom or it being really spelled out. And even though other firms do, like they might hold like a few weeks of training and give some kind of run down, you're still put in that spot of, well, I'm gonna tell you what we need in words and maybe a sketch, but then I need something finished back, and then we can talk about that, and then do it again. Because
Hmm.
often, even if you understand them perfectly, there's gonna be something to tweak, maybe adding a dimension or adding an ADA circle, or something that you just didn't think of, prior
Yeah.
to. And you mentioned in school how learning how you had a knack for constructing narrative. Well, in now being in work for a year, what's that kind of biggest takeaway from it, both personally and skills, or like, what do you think?
So my takeaway from working for the past year is definitely that I've definitely learned some better skills. I've honed my skills better. Um, I'm getting a little bit more used to what the workload is at the firm. Um, it was my intention to start working at a smaller firm to begin with because I did want that experience of having like a more direct interaction with the principal, with my boss, and it's definitely been helpful at learning different skills, learning new things that I could have forgotten from school or that I just didn't learn in school. Um, but I think that right now it's mainly working and getting things done. I've definitely been able to speed up my production time and all of that.
Mm, and seeing that okay, I'm starting at a point of I really know nothing again, and having to build up to, okay, I can, I have some amount of competence here. I don't feel
Hmm.
completely useless, even though I spent 4 years doing this. And so, how
Yeah.
do you think school prepared you well for this role?
Well, school to me did the the minimum at least where we got some experience with the programs that we would need to know to how to use him in the actual um, office. But I don't think school does that great a job at preparing us for the actual working environment
Oh,
that's at a
yeah.
firm.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely agree. And that's why we are even speaking now to even try and really pinpoint. But especially after our how two group discussions on our first jobs versus school, on and on, it came apparent how what happened in school is so necessary. But then also you have to be able to actually build it as well. And then so how can we merge those two? So before we move on to how they did not prepare us, which I think we can speak about for a minute, let's try and stay on, like, what are some great qualities or practices or because obviously it's not like school was a complete dud, you know.
Hmm.
So where do you think you grew the most in school and were the most challenged, and also why do you think school puts you in that spot to be able to be that creative?
I think what school mainly prepared me on was uh, mainly my communication skills, because
Mm,
as the way that I am, I'm not a very talkative person. I'm more of an introvert, and I wouldn't usually talk to people that much. But in school, you have to talk to your professors. That's the only way to be able to get a hint at it, as for if you're moving in the right direction. So you gotta build some relationship with them, a relationship of some sort, to be able to be okay beyond speaking terms with them, and get guidance, ask for the guidance, because
mm,
you can be sitting on your desk spinning your wheels like crazy and not figuring things out. So I think from school it was mainly communicating. It's important to communicate, and that's something that's come up here at work, where if I don't know a certain thing my boss is asking me for, or if I'm not entirely sure if I'm doing things correctly, I gotta ask him, and he's there to answer my questions as much as he can.
bro, that's so spot on because in work we can often feel so naive, so incompetent, so inexperienced, really. Of I don't even know
Yeah.
where to go from here at times, but it's always that great feeling of, oh yeah, I can just put what I've done on my boss's desk and we can talk about it and I can get productive feedback. Because one thing that kind of stuck out to me is, yes, bosses are bosses, and especially if you screw up the money, then like there's a big problem. But all in all, the bosses I've had are so much nicer than professors.
For sure.
Like any amount of personal anxiety I had not wanting to approach my boss because of just asking him a question that I didn't know. Not once has it been, how do you not know that? Aren't you dumb? Pa, 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 pa. And a part of it's on me for trying to ask actual questions I don't know, because if something is easily Googleable, then do you need to ask the question? Or
Yeah.
are we just wasting everybody's time? And so trying to understand these very nuanced questions of, oh, so I finished this drawing, do I send it to the client or the mechanical or like who first? Or what's even the process here? And thankfully our bosses have been at it for decades to understand that process, and frankly that's all it takes. And in school it really put it on us to figure it out, but also you can bend to the will of the professor, or you try and learn as much as possible. But in school, it was a lot more brutalness and a lot more
Hmm.
insulting. And so, how, because that's obviously not the most productive environment. Granted, it helps to like toughen up skin, like that's crucial. But where do you think school is left wanting and is lacking, and where did it not prepare you?
Like I think it's that, and what we're trying to explore with this entire project, it's that gap between college and work. Like, sure, we did have that one semester of pro practice, but it would be helpful to have more of that throughout the entire schooling process.
Mm,
Like we should be able to be we should be able to understand our portfolios. We should be able to understand how interviews are. We should be able to understand the whole NCARB stuff, which with the exams, which with the hours, trying to get our licensure. We should be able to be informed more directly about that instead of having that be something that is in the background. In a way, school is more about the theory of architecture rather than the job of being an architect. I think that's that's where it's let us down somewhat, and that's the gap that we're trying to better understand with this.
mm, right, because none of us want to lose that theory, that critical thinking, that basically
Hmm.
starting at first principles and then going from there and trying to just be as creative as possible. And in our jobs, it's like, well, I'm just pounding out legal documents, which like that is the seriousness of our job. Like people have to be able to be in our buildings for a long time and have them not kill them. It's like it has to
Hmm.
be a healthy structure. And I find often even asking, is this place healthy? Should we even build this place? Should we do this fast food chain? Should we do this or that? And often we don't,
Yeah,
in the job, most of them can't even say no. Like they just aren't able to turn it down. Also, because the business model kind of dictates that,
exactly.
and so I'll phrase it in maybe a slightly different way. What are some things, whether it's topics or something very specific, that you wish you were taught in school? It was like kind of answered,
Mhm.
but I want to try and be as detailed as we can.
I guess I guess that would be more about the work environment itself. Um, and I suppose it also depends on the firm and the people running it. But I think there should be a way for us to have a better idea of how actually transitioning from school to office is gonna go down, or how what to prepare for.
And what's very sad is many of them who are supposed to be a professor are not even in a position to even teach us that. They themselves haven't really gone through that. Especially
Hmm.
like all of the elective professors, that's a whole other ball game because those are a lot more specialized. And
Hmm.
so like it makes sense having an historian teach history, but
Yeah.
in studio, it would also make sense to have an architect teach an architectural studio. But they still only have people who have graduate degrees teach, and it's not really that bare. But some schools require people to actually have a job to teach because
Hmm.
they don't want to have that big disconnection. I still feel it's there in how school is set up because it's just like any other profession. It's like yes, we have different kinds of classes, but we still just have a base class and then our electives. So even in the structure of school, what do you think would have helped you get more of that understanding? Is it like design build? Is it design building small stuff like furniture or mill work, you know, but then that's still kind of your forte. Hey, like, what do you think those stepping stones could be?
I think it would be a better, more consistent integration of actual firm and college in like design firm is a good step, but I think working directly with a firm and even maybe having architects from the firm come and talk to us more consistently about what they're expecting from us, about what they're looking for in their next employees, that would have helped a lot. Even if it was like having multiple workshops throughout the year about different uh, being in different spots in design projects or in the overall completion of a project. We could have gone through like a mock design phase, construction phase,
Mm.
finish phase, which I think to an extent the design and build program satisfies some of those things, but I still feel that we would benefit more from like direct interaction with different firms.
Right, and I hadn't even thought about it till right now of the timing, because like how long do these projects actually take? These real ones, it takes many layers of approval, many back and forth between us, the client, the city, engineers, on and on. And
Mm-hmm.
like a semester isn't even enough, because like I'm on a project. I've been at my firm a year and a few months. That I'm still on the same project, and we're just now going into permitting, just because it's just taken this, you know. And you can have more streamlined projects for students, especially if it can be more in that design build. But the thought is more of how constrained we are in this semester. I mean, even the way school is structured, it goes back to an agrarian society, and most of us aren't farming anymore. So I don't need to have that summer off. But that's just, it's so societally the norm and accepted for that to be the case. And I find it just wild how, in order to learn this profession, it's about doing as many projects fully through. And school
Mm-hmm.
kind of simulates it, but I think we're doing ourselves a big disservice having our school not even think about or focus the actual finished product and how much either it can change. Because like I feel I should be designing with the constructability in mind, you know, and that should be a part of that that process. And it's like just a shame that it's not. And so in relation like to school, um like school versus now, like, is it more part-time work also? Is it a completely new system that we need to be able to like train people, you know? Because I'm just kind of at a loss, and it seems completely counterproductive to any kind of society to have these bracketed off educational training sessions instead of just one kind of all the way through, but not like one size fits all, but the same kind of
Uh-huh.
pipeline, you know. Um, but is there anything else that you would change about school, or didn't like it, or actually put your biggest gripe with school? And
Um, I'm not sure about that. I mean, sure, some professors can be difficult to deal with, but that also helps us toughen up and whatnot. But it's also how sometimes it's just obvious for some specific professors that they're using the studio to accomplish whatever their own personal goals are. And I'm not sure if that's entirely fair or not. I guess it's been done before and it's been done for years, so it's fine. But I mean, a studio should be the time for us to be learning and growing and experiencing from the experiences of this professor, instead of us just being production monkeys for whatever they're working on.
Mm,
That only happened once with the one professor. Uh, but yeah, that's as far as I can think about it right now. That would be it. That's it. Because I mean, for career such as architecture, it's intense. It asks for your time. It asks for effort, and we get a taste of that in school. And whether you like it or not, you gotta get through it. And there's some criticism to go on that, like we shouldn't we should not be required to sacrifice our free time or our hours of sleep to get things done. But sometimes that's how it is, um, even in the real profession, in the actual profession. So maybe there's ways that maybe the coming generations, maybe even our generation, whenever we get in a position of power, we could curve that down and like bring some change to the culture of the career as a
mm,
whole.
right. And that is, I hope, entirely because it can just evolve and change, and like everything is just an agreement between people, and we can change that uh, agreement. No, we can't force everybody else to operate how we want, but we can also operate with the people who want to operate with us. So like we
Hmm.
don't need the whole world to necessarily change, but I think it's on us if we want to just continue and just be our boss's job or not. So, in the job that you have now, and in this experience, what is lacking that school provided?
Um, lacking. I would probably just say like direct learning, I suppose.
Mm,
Because I mean, school is school. You're supposed to be there to learn. Work, you're supposed to be working. You're supposed to be producing, um, and you're kind of left on your own to figure things out, which is fine. It's again, it's how things are. It's how things work, and it's not the same at all places. Um, but I do wish my boss would be able to directly or indirectly impart more of his knowledge of the business. Like, sure, I've been working with him for the past year. Um, I'm I've mainly been doing just elevation drawings, a couple of plans here and there. Um, yeah, he had me go submit a couple of permits and whatnot to a city, but I wasn't a participant in the process that led to getting all those permits ready. Um, so I would like to learn of more the different aspects of the of architecture itself from my boss if I could. But I know that that he might not have the time for that because again he's busy. He's trying to get
Right.
projects done.
And that's where, what is the organization? What is the structure? Because as big of an ego as I have, I know that I can't do everything, and I know I need other people to help, and I know that I have only so many strengths and many more
Hmm.
weaknesses. And if all of us can somehow combine these strengths, it can be much more grand than me being in an office alone. Because then, like, you do find, oh, I at least need one other person, you know? If because I don't want to be doing all the detailing, all the drafting, but then you must do the business and the accounting and the business development and everything that is outside of our realm when it could be specialized. But that's very interesting how specialized learning just stops in college. Like, I've always been astounded how the idea of lectures or a professor or growing or learning or being challenged like stops at that age, and then you're just like, okay, now you are an adult, and then there's no other fake test to practice, like you just have to
Yeah.
learn. And like there are other groups and other ways of growing, but especially in our field, the most
Hmm.
things that I've learned about are lighting products or like interior products, because that's who comes to our office because it makes them money when they are able to have us spec their products. So
Yeah.
I'm not really like, I am learning because my boss says a bunch, like, if we can't accurately put what is in our drawing in the space for that cost we promised, then what are we doing here? Then we aren't actually
Hmm.
being, our job. And that's where in school, like, obviously you can't get lost on budget because there's whole careers on that, But I found school was a lot of pretend land of whose money is this? I don't know. When maybe we can be thinking about how can we get that money and have it not be only from rich people, because commoners have an incredible amount of purchasing power, but it's just not as collectivized or as structured as such. And that's its own whole discussion I'm trying to solve, but it involves,
Yeah.
taking.
Like there's nothing wrong with being conceptual in school, but there's also the issue of a lot of people just maybe if they if like me they just don't happen to get an internship or anything like that. I have no idea what's going on at the firm, and then they just jump in thinking, okay, we're gonna be working on crazy ideas and making them real, and they just land at a firm and then just sit there for hours just drawing lines or whatever. It
Right, like,
just kills the inspiration there.
right,
But it
because
is a good idea to start wrapping some of the reality into the conceptual.
also a big part that's overlooked is how to get a job. How are these and obviously it's through experience, through many different kinds of relationships, but even the tactics of it, or even how what the business of architecture actually even is. It's so not even spoken about that, because I honestly don't even know if they know, because they aren't even in it. They're in the business. Like, most schools are in the business of tax money, and that's a whole other business. Like,
Hmm.
that's not having to provide a quality service or product in a competitive way at all. It's actually the opposite. And I mean, but then that's also its own
It's a whole
discussion.
another
But
can of worms. Yeah.
in the spot where you are now, I mean, just in hearing this story, of basically bursting at the seams of or with creativity, and then you are at the spot you are now. Like, is this the job you can see doing forever? And if not, what is that job? What's it look like?
So definitely, I'll be an architect, and I'll
Mm.
be buried in my own custom mausoleum as an architect. But right now, at least where I'm working at right now, I don't see myself working there for the next decade or whatever. I see it as my first try at the career, my first try working at a small firm, and I feel that it might benefit me to go try out different places, different firm sizes, different firms that focus on different projects. And like at the end of the day, my ultimate goal is to eventually have my own firm, open up my own office, take advantage of my dad's business, and incorporate that into
Mm.
my own, my own business. Um, and that's the amalgamation of ideas that I have in my mind. I'll be able to design my buildings, design my homes, furnish them myself with my furniture business.
Oh, that's so awesome. And I've been actually been wanting to mention this like the whole time, and like trying to find the right spot. But this past Wednesday, I was at this gigantic millwork warehouse, bro. It was
Mm-hmm.
freaking huge, and they built anything and everything. And in it, they had many different areas. But what's interesting is, and I don't even know how I feel about it, but almost all of it was actually machine made, and it was people feeding it, and even to make the cabinets or the shelving or whatever it is perfectly square, it has a machine for that too, and it just goes in,
Yeah,
boom, boom, boom. So these workers aren't even having to be, very precise, and they have this one spot. It was where they held all of the raw inventory, and it had a big suction cup robot floating over it and like picking up board
mm-hmm.
by board by board. And then you could program it, hey, pick up 80 sheets of this, 20 of this, blah 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 blah, and then you could just leave and then come back and it's all, done. And it was a little slow, but it's fast when if you don't have to have a person,
Yeah,
there. But the one thing they still made by hand was the furniture, and especially the embroidery of it. That's like pretty tough to have it be just
mm-hmm.
machine. But 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 I'm at this place, and I'm staring at it like, oh, fucking Gustavo would love this shit, because like, they truly swear, as every person does, but they actually, I think, can pull it off. They can build you anything you want, and
Yeah,
we saw a couple of curved columns or what have you, but still pretty basic architecturally. And my boss went off of like, hey guys, we have all of this new tech, but we're still building in the same old forms. Challenge these people. Have a crazy curved wall to a ceiling, or something extremely hard, because everything in there they were building pretty square. I mean, obviously,
yeah,
especially like cabinets. Like it'll be square. Just because like have to store stuff. It makes more sense. But seeing that scale, but then also knowing they're just this like small portion of the entire like building process,
Production, yeah.
and just the amount of people it takes. But they did both wood and also steel, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
very interesting being in that space. And honestly, the job didn't seem too bad, either drafting or being the person who's a, because you're more of an assembler, you know, than like a
Yeah.
craftsman. And like, yes, there's pleasuring and precision, and they are quite good. Um, and it's poor also. They really knew their materials really well, and that was a more impressive part of even being shown. You can have the same wood, but if you don't specify from the same log, you can have a whole bunch of different stuff, you know, or
Mm-hmm.
it is it all the same color, you know, and those like kinds of aspects. And I can totally see you building up to that and having, because I am completely with you. Like, we should bring this and more in house, and then we can all like actually do it more what we want rather than, you know, some boss, or
Mm-hmm.
really not even a boss, some other client. You know, like ideally we can get to a spot of being able to truly fund our our own stuff. We
Yeah.
uh we had a question in the chat of, shouldn't this system of just throwing you into work change? And yeah, that's the whole point of us even speaking of trying to build that gap, build that true community between school ending and then being an architect. Because once you are an architect, you got a pretty good network, and at that point, you've met enough people. But especially our generation, and
Mm-hmm.
and so as you sit here now, I feel that you've laid out the past and more of a vague future goals, you know. But over like the next like 3 to 5, what's next for Gustavo?
Mm. Well,
Gotcha.
hopefully, I keep moving up in my path in architecture. Um, I close. What's the word? Like my goals. My most immediate goals is to get more into the business, learn more aspects of it. Um, try and apply more of what I've learned working with my dad, working at a firm, because I feel that working for my dad has prepared me for things that I would be doing later on down the line in architecture. Like I'm the main one that goes and talks to our clients. I'm the main one that talks to them and walks them down through their designs and all of that. So I feel that eventually, once I'm in the position that I'll be talking to the clients of architecture firms, I'll be in a pretty good solid position once that happens, because I already have practice. I have practice talking to clients,
Right.
practice walking them down designs, practice suggestions and materials, suggestions and finishes, suggestions and uses and all that.
Interesting.
But
Eh, uh-huh.
but yeah, I want to learn more. I want to keep learning as much as I can, if not where I'm working at now, or wherever I end up at.
Right.
And I want to keep moving up, moving up the ladder, I guess.
Amen. And it's more of that personal rather than some external justification, because especially putting that onus on learning, like that is so crucial and really one that puts you on a forever path, because you can
Yeah.
always learn more, and it seems from within you that want of, oh, okay, I can do this. What about that? And that, and that, and that, and stepping up and up and up, because like even as kids, you don't really think, oh yeah, so running a business, speaking with clients, I don't think you ever even think in those terms, but now it's like, okay, I'm speaking with clients and consultants and engineers, and there's
Hmm.
millions or hundreds of thousands on the, it's like there's a lot happening, and but, but also, and in 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 all of this, self-awareness is crucial. And so as you see growing and becoming a full-fledged architect, what area of architecture, and I don't mean what kind of houses, or are you like, I I, I mean more in the practice, like, because in my mind there's basically four main roles. There's design, technician, business development, and then project management. And
Hmm.
those four combined run a great firm. And if it's just one point person, it's like, well, then you have to do all of it or hire some people. But of those four, where do you see yourself? Do you see fitting into one of them, into two, into all of them? Do you want to be that main person who just does it all, or is it, like, what do you think?
I feel that to reach my ultimate goal of having my own firm, my own business, I would have to accommodate to be able to be all of those at once. But I feel that my goal as of now is to fall in that spot of the designer, because ultimately that's what got me into this in the first place, wanting to give form to my drawings, wanting to give form to my art. I want to be able to design.
Mm.
Yeah, just that's the simplest way to put it. I want to give life to what it's to my ideas, and that's what the designer does.
Beautiful, and that even harkens back to building that narrative, and
Hmm.
that's so strong. Like, people don't always think, oh, can a building have a story? It's like, well, it actually hopefully should, or else it's just a really
Hmm.
boring, dry, and it should be demolished. There should be an
Hmm.
essence, some imagination, some joy, some romanticism about it, rather than, oh yeah, I just live here and I hate it and I want to leave. Like, it should be that bit more, and especially in school. I think that's so spot on, because I saw you always wrestling with the idea and trying to figure it out, and walk through it in every step possible, and being confused, and then, oh, I got it, and then execute, but I could tell that wrestling with it really grips you, and honestly, after speaking to Jay, it makes complete sense, because even st- starting up in growing up in that son of a cabinet maker, of always being around real work being done, and a whole bunch, like, I'm sure it's countless of how many cabinets he's put in, like how many has he built in his
Oh yeah.
life. Like who knows? It's like so many, and seeing that as an option or a path, and actually doing it well. But even like starting off, like having a hammer and playing basically with tools, like as a baby, and
Hmm.
but then actually in school, oh, I can draw. Oh, I can draw well. Oh, my dad built stuff, and they draw for that. And what if I could could actualize this drawing into something real? Because everything around us is drawn at some point. This couch, the car, the table, like no one just builds anything at a whim. They have to sit and sketch it out and think it out. And I'm sure growing up, seeing that execution of cabinetry, it's like, well, what about a little creation here? Like, because obviously it's possible to build these over and over and over. But what if it's bigger? And finding that span, and it's so interesting how you felt that personal pull to it, because there was no one person or thing or time that you mentioned, that actually was that spark. It just always like kind of like was obviously in school, being into more game design, which is its own actualization, but then also moving into, okay, I can actually craft the real world. And and then just, okay, what schools are an option? And most people, bro, who go to school are accepted, go to orientation, but then find out they can't go. Most of them, like, that's it, they're done, like
Hmm.
I that obstacle, school, no more. But it was like, oh no, I'll just take off a year. I mean, I'm sure it was tough, because we could dig into that feeling, but to me it's more apparent that you stayed that course, and that being able to create something out of nothing is what you are. That is what a designer is. That's you. And finding that groove and staying to it. I mean, most people get pushed and pulled, and are like, oh, I actually hate my job, but I'm in it because I have to. And it's like, whoa, that's horrible. Or I'm in a job because, well, I didn't plan anything, and with you, that seemed like it wasn't even ever an option to not think about the future, especially, bro, coming from Mexico and then moving here, staying 5 in 1 room. My battery's out. Perfect time. But
No, but for sure, it hasn't been an easy path. And even back then, when I decided that I was gonna go into architecture, and there wasn't gonna be anything changing my mind. But not being able to go to college straight out of high school definitely was a blow to me. But I managed to work through that, and I managed to find an alternative, and I'm here.
so,
And
uh-huh.
yeah, at the end of the day, you gotta find fulfillment in what you're doing. It can't just be a job for a job's sake. Um, sure, you gotta pay your bills. You gotta find a way to make a living, But if you're gonna put so much time into something that you're gonna spend the rest of your life doing, it has to be fulfilling to you.
Mm.
That's how I feel.
And fulfilling to you is creating something out of nothing, right?
Creation, yeah.
Creation. You know what cows do
Uh-huh.
out in the field. That's so funny. That the one thing you want to do is create, and then in what, because you had Boswell pretty early, right?
Had Boswell
Oh
twice.
yeah, twice. And I mean, he had many famous quotes, but architects don't create. That's what cows do in the pasture.
I mean, to be fair, the first time around I had him was a rough time. The second time around, I knew what vibe he brought into the studio, so I knew how to deal with it, and
Right.
I was actually able to deal with it fine. He would actually sit down with me and talk to me about my projects that the second time around.
Oh, he did.
Hmm.
No.
But he sure did have some interesting things to say in general.
No, he had the most quotables, I think. I mean,
Hmm.
he would just stare over our plans and be in just disbelief that anybody drew a plan that way. And he's like, "Do y'all live like this? Like, are y'all houses designed this way?" Like, he was just so
Uh-huh.
confused on
Exactly.
like why anyone would even draw it that way, or even put like two staircases right next to each other, or whatever it was, you know.
Hmm.
And so I kind of want to dig a bit deeper on that time, because like how did you deal with that blow of I can't go to tech, and like frankly because of the money, which is just like so understandable, because like college is bonkers expensive. Like, does it cost that much to
Hmm.
really give this education? And then, bro, I'm sure you probably couldn't really work out there, so then housing too, you know. So a short question of, did you live with parents in school at UTA?
Yeah, the entire time
Okay, so that
until
saves some
until
breath.
recently when I moved out this February.
Hey, gang
Hmm.
gang, because like it's always so freaking tough, because it's like having to basically live on an island but be supported by the home nation, you know. And like, because if you can't really work, and then even to be able to work just to pay for school to not be in debt, that's insane. And then on top of it, to even pay just to live, it's
Hmm.
it becomes like, it requires more hours than there is in a day to actually work for school and our own livelihood while in school. That's just like bonkers. And so, in that moment of, okay, I can't go, like, how was that dealt with? Like, did you expect it would be a year, or was it unknown at first? Like, kind of like walk me through that. I was it pretty devastating, or like, how'd you
Oh yeah,
handle
it
it?
was pretty devastating.
Yeah.
It was a strong shot to, I suppose, to my, is ego the right word? I don't know, to my feelings, to my headspace,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of expectation from your peers, from your family to do good, to do better, to progress. That's the main reason why we came to this country, to do better, for a better life. And to me, seeing the situation and feeling that I failed at the main goal, that was pretty hard.
Wow.
But the plan was to figure out a solution as soon as possible. I did kind of take the year to figure it out, and the solution was to find a more affordable option, and that's how I came upon UTA.
Right.
Um, and I mean, throughout the time that I wasn't in school anymore, I was working full time with my dad rather than just partially.
Mm. Did that help teach any of the business of it, or is just the business of buildings that much different?
Well, the main thing that I've learned off of from working at my with my dad is that client relationship and trying to get them um get them to finalize or make a decision on designs and what they want to do. Again, bring to fruition what they have in their minds. So that's mainly what I've been able to build up from working with my dad.
And that does sound like perfect experience for our job, because I think the big trick in school is that there is actually a lot of design in our industry, and where it's
Mm-hmm.
actually what you just said of it's what does the client want? Okay, I'll make it legal, I'll make it structural, and I'll make it cost effective. Okay, please pay me 3%. And there's no, I mean, of course, at the top end, when like big or whomever, like they get that freedom to actually design, because they
Mm-hmm.
almost always also win on that design prowess and an execution, but more of like these of it. But for 99 cents out there, it's just doing exactly what the client wants. And I think that's not spoken about enough of yeah, have fun designing in school.
Mm-hmm.
Because not much will happen, after. And, and unless you force it and are creative enough to not be pigeonholed, because also put these firms, like, one thing I hear from you is that need and that want to learn. And I'd also implore of you, don't be afraid to ask those questions, because
Mm-hmm.
yes, he's busy, but even just asking, like, hey, so like, how do you get clients, or like, like, what do you say to like make them be comfortable, or like, how do you close, or like, whatever it is, like I find these people are actually interested in creating other great architects, and
Yeah.
because of that, they want to do it, but they don't really know how, because they also weren't taught how. They were
Mm-hmm.
only taught design, and then they kind of figured out. Like, I've also seen kind of whatever your first couple jobs are, it makes a big impression, because say like you do go off and do your own thing, whose templates are you using? Are you gonna make a bunch of new
Exactly.
templates? So like you might as stuff evolves, but I'm on a template that my boss made 20 years ago when he started it, but he probably took it from his firm that they made 20 years before that, and who knows,
Yeah.
so these, even the way we do our practices as well, and I think we can really begin to challenge that, because I mean, bro, I hear it within you of that want to create and bring something more beautiful, more functional, more affordable, more long lasting than just these stick buildings we have that someone else take. My big problem and is these clients have so much say, or it's not really that, it's that the driver of their decisions is always what's the cheapest right now over the next 5 years. But
Mm-hmm.
then again, in 5 years, you have to build it again. It's like, well, do you buy that? Like, when buying a blank white T-shirt, do you buy the blank or the cheap Hanes one that will tear out pretty quickly, or do you buy the Ralph Lauren that will last you? And the Hanes actually ends up being more expensive in the long run because
The long
you
run, yeah.
almost have to switch them out over and over and over. But we aren't even thinking in those longer terms at all because the people who have that stake in that say are so far removed from the people who actually occupy the spaces. Like, it's just wild to me. And so, in that sticking the course of it, how I what made you still stay on architecture? Because most people would just almost be so embarrassed, like, oh geez, like, I mean, even though it's not even anything to be like embarrassed about, but our minds are like so like fucked that it'll trick ourselves into thinking what other people think of us, and then we care about that thought about what other people like, and it's a
Yeah,
whole just like
exactly.
twisted cycle. But more like emotionally, how did you process that? And then, like, coming back to school, was it what you had hoped for?
I would say that I suck with architecture because I that's what I had already internalized that I was it's what made sense for me to follow. It's what made
Mm,
for sense based it made sense for me based on my background at least of a combination of my hobbies and a combination of experience and what my dad does. Other than that, like I'm not particularly good at math, so engineering wouldn't really make my thing. As much as my dad wanted me to be a doctor, I was not trying to be a doctor.
yeah, that's brutal. That's a special kind of
You
person.
know. Hmm. And I was like, okay, like I could go into video games, but again, I had already internally I had already set my mind into architecture,
Mm,
so that I kept strong to that idea, and I kept to that when I started to look for another college again.
and it also helps that for some reason, UTA is the only school in DFW that even
And the
offers it.
yeah.
There's so many schools there,
Hmm.
and it's the only one. And
Exactly, yeah.
and there should be more, but hopefully better
Eventually.
schools. So in school, because it sounds like in working, like you've been able to get that better competency, and it's that's had its own challenge. Just, but I'm not hearing it being like a big struggle. Am I right?
I mean, the main struggle isn't anything major. Like right now, I'm only using AutoCAD as the main thing
Yeah,
for
me
all the
too.
drawings, and I like we use that throughout the entire school process, so I'm fine using that. The only thing that would be a struggle is like again, it's not like a really big thing, but it's like the amount of times I would have to go back and redraw something because the client decided to change something up, or like whoever my boss is dealing with has was like had something else in mind or whatever. It's mainly things like that, and trying to get those changes done in a expedient matter, getting them as quick as possible to get them back, submitting back to the clients to go ahead and finalize things. Um, it's just this the main struggle has just been trying to become as productive as possible, as quickly as possible, so that I don't become a burden to my boss. I have to become an asset.
Right, right. I heard almost, or not, I heard the best pitch for when in it, when in an interview, and it's basically to tell the boss, "Hey, I'm gonna take your job in 4 years, but that's good for you because then it'll free up you to do whatever you want." And
Mm,
like that kind of a pitch of, like, I will grow, and basically promising to learn rather than coming in, "Oh yeah, I'm perfectly qualified, I promise, I went to Harvard and I went to here and I went to here," but then those
yeah,
people often, like, I also crash and burn. And like, so to you, how are you measuring that productivity, and is, like, how are you able to not have burnout?
it's mainly from feedback from my boss, how quickly I can get things done now, against how quickly I was doing things at the very beginning.
Hmm.
Um, there were a couple of times uh, where we would talk through the drawings I was doing, trying to fix mistakes or like adjust things differently. Um, and and now I've I feel that I've more I feel that I've become more productive now versus when I first started, mainly because of that. Mainly because I'm not making as many mistakes as I used to. I'm more used to his drawing style or like his presentation style, how he expects things to be drawn.
Hmm.
Burnout wise, I mean, for the most part, I get to work a set amount of hours from 9 to 5, and that's it. If he wants me to complete something sooner, then I would put extra time into getting those things done, and that hasn't come up as much um, during this time that I worked with them.
That's good.
So I can keep a steady workload with them and keep things to a reasonable amount of time.
Right, because
And so far, that hasn't. So far, that's what's been holding back the burnout.
mm, that could pacing of it, and I tend to really agree. And as much as people like complain about the whole 9 to 5, if it's structured properly, it can work quite well, because then, okay, I know I'll be out, and I know I'm not gonna finish everything today. It just
Mm-hmm.
like it just there's so much to do. I'm not even gonna finish it this week. So you have to be able to pace it out well, and it's also on the boss to be able to set proper schedules and expectations. And I feel I'm in a
Yeah.
spot where it's gauged pretty well, and he understands. No, this will take 30 hours to do, and then I can move on to something else, but no, this
Hmm.
will take a good chunk. And I feel a decent amount of firms that aren't just production houses have this understanding, and they're able to, because also they don't want to work every evening till 8 p.m., like at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so that ability to actually speak um and truly just um I just lost my train of thought. But in work and being in that pacing, I find it can help, but it's really on each person. And pro, it sounds like you were on the path and in the, maybe not the exact role you want to be, but in that in that spot to grow and learn over time, and like starting off, basically from childhood up until now, being involved with the building, but then thinking, oh hey, I can actually create and design, and then, well, who does that? Architects do. And it's okay, we'll all stick on that through thick and thin.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, I just fucking applaud you, and it's pretty great hearing this journey and process, because so many different people have different experiences, backgrounds, and futures, and I just find each story be so crucial. And so, is there anything that you think we missed out of? I mean, it's tough to distill 20 odd years, into a couple hours, but is there anything like you feel we missed here?
Um, I don't think so. I think like the main things is that yeah, that my hobby of drawing and my dad's business are the main things that I brought together to decide to go on this path towards architecture, to becoming an architect. And sure, through school there were some struggles, some rough times, but for the most part, I've been able to get through most of those. And all you can do is your best and just keep moving forward. I
Amen.
feel that I'm on a I'm on an okay spot. In an okay spot now. Um, I'm I'm making the best of what I got right now, where I'm working currently, and still working with my dad. And I feel that I just need to give it my all to just keep going forward. I'll get to my goal eventually, however long it takes, but I'll get there.
Amen. Amen. And bro, if we are at the spot now of being licensed and having jobs, I'd be like, hey, Gustavo, let's collab on a design. I need some help. Like, let's talk. Like, what are you thinking
For
here?
sure.
Like, come on. And we are so close and still so far from that. But especially
Mm-hmm.
building and keeping these talks, and not just losing all we built in school of our community, and actually carrying it on. Like, I want to work with so many people, frankly, because I know how much I lack. And
Mm-hmm.
and so, bro, I just thank you so much for the time, and it was an
Yeah,
absolute pleasure.
my
Thank you
pleasure,
so
man.
much. And are you hopping on the debate on Wednesday?
I'll try. I need to think about my position
R-
a bit more. I
right.
think I'm leaning more towards Irvin, but I need to figure out my points.
Yeah, yeah. Won't be a super duper detailed and researched debate.
Hmm.
More the merrier. Or I don't expect a bunch of homework to be done. Just because
Yeah.
like people are busy and this isn't a debate class. But all of us have our own. I mean, hopefully there's some kind of research or something to actually tangibly talk about. Because if we only speak about
Hmm.
opinions, But bro, you should hop on and whichever side you take, I'm sure it'll be fucking interesting. Because that perspective that you have is just fucking invaluable, bro. So I will hopefully no, I will see you Wednesday. It's happening
Yeah, for sure.
for sure.
Mm.
Hi, bro. Have a great evening.
Are you as well?
Bye.
Thank you all for all tuning in. Tune in to the next our next broadcast on Wednesday.
Amen. Hasta luego. Hey.